Goal!
Did you take out the trash?
No.
Let's talk about weaving. Hi everyone, I'm Lanen. Nice to see you all back. Thanks for checking out the channel. We've gotten a lot of views lately and that's super exciting for us. I hope you're enjoying everything. By user request, I am here today to give you a little weaving tutorial. Someone wanted to know a little more about how the looms that I use work based on a video we posted a couple weeks ago where I did a slow-mo or a sped-up version of some weaving. So I hope I can give you a little insight into what weaving looks like. I've been weaving for about 8 years now on these Inkle looms. I am by no means a master at weaving. There's so much to learn. There's always something new to learn, a new technique, a new fiber to work with. I mostly work on these, as I said, they're Inkle looms. I've got 2 different sizes. These are not period. I actually don't know when they came about. I forgot to look that up, but I know they're not really historical, and they're certainly not a Viking find. But they let you do Viking type things or historical based weaving type things, even though in a nice little portable way, right? I can pick this up and take it with me. I can get it out of the way. I can stop and start when I need to, which I find super helpful because I can bring them to camp with me and work on them there, or I can pick them up and leave them on the coffee table. What I do, Inkle weaving and some different styles of pickup weaving, is also not really Viking period. I'm sure there's finds out there. It's a basic weaving technique, right? What most people hear about the Vikings having is card weaving, and I'll put some examples of card weaving up here. I do have cards. I have tried card weaving. It is something I have really struggled to grasp the concept of. So rather than get frustrated and never weave again, I found something a little more accessible to me that still gives you the look and feel of that period trim or belt or whatever it is you're making. It's a very similar craft. Card weaving is more period as far as Viking trim is concerned. But gosh darn, does Inkle weaving give you a great 10-foot rule. It really dresses up your garb. You can make other things with Inkle or card weaving. So I've got a belt. I will get a little closer so you can see. This belt is dirty. I wear it a lot. It'll be a little hard to see, but I also made this trim here. It's got a lot of different colors. This is a fairly wide piece, and you can tell these fibers are actually a different size. This is a very thick cotton fiber. This is a much thinner fiber. I work with either one depending on what we're doing, what kind of end result we're looking to achieve. But they're all really strong. So I mostly make belts and trim, but these can be dog leashes, they can be dog collars, they can be purse handles. I know people who use them for straps to hold water bottles, guitar straps, anything that needs a piece of strapping. I mean, you could use it to tie something down if you needed to. Another really traditional use for these is actually tying up your hair. It becomes a hairband. It's a way to secure your headscarf. Really anything you need a piece of ribbon-like material for. I mean, gosh, you could probably use it as rope too, especially depending on the fiber. So I mostly work in cotton. It's easy, it's accessible. I can get it in great colors. Of course, you can also weave with silk and linen and wool. I've done some work in bamboo. Depends on how much money you want to spend on your fiber too. So that said, here's another piece I made out of the heavy cotton recently. This is going to end up being a strap for a musical instrument. And here's I made myself a band for my temple rings. Another really basic, simple inkle weave here. Come on, focus. There we go. And here is a piece on some garb already. This is actually alpaca wool. See, and it looks, this is one of my favorite pieces, and it's just 2 colors. It's so nice, but man, does it really take a less expensive piece of garb and turn it into something that you would pay a lot more money for. Now, there's also, I talked a little bit about pickup weaving, which is a different technique. It's a little more complicated, I guess. It's not where a beginner would start, but you can get a pattern. This piece was one of the first pickup pieces I made. It's called Basic Pickup. You're manipulating threads in pairs, so you always have one up and one down, which is also kind of how weaving works. But anyway, I picked this pattern because it looks a lot like a card weaving pattern, but it was much more simple for me to understand. But that's a different thing. We'll talk more about pickup patterns there. As I said, I have a smaller loom and a bigger loom. These were both made by the same person. I will try and find a link to his shop. Last I knew his Etsy shop was on hiatus. But if you want one right away, there's a ton of Inkle looms on Etsy. I've got my smaller everyday loom here. This is what I started with. It'll give you a piece that's about 9 feet long. I also like to show off my bigger loom. This will give me a piece about 12 feet long, and it's currently all warped up to give you a little idea of what we're going to try and do here. So you start at one end, you make a big long looping circle, and you tie it back around to the other side. This is a more complicated piece of weaving. This is called Baltic pickup. It's something I just recently learned thanks to some wonderful crafters on YouTube who I will also provide some links for, because when I got the books to learn how to do this style of weaving, it made no sense to me at all. I was very discouraged, and then it occurred to me YouTube has a ton of tutorials. Why don't I take a look and see what's out there? And sure enough, I'll put the link to the video below. She made a wonderful tutorial on this very simple basics of what Baltic pickup looks like and how it works. And then suddenly the very expensive pattern book that I had bought made sense, and I was very excited that I didn't have to just well, that was useless. So when in doubt, check the internet. There's a ton of good resources out there. But the question that we got was, could I just show a little bit more about how the weaving works? So we'll give you a little tutorial about that today. So this is my Inkle loom. This is called a tension peg. I was actually just pulled something off, so I've got to move it forward a little bit. You'll see why that's important later. As you can see, it's got a series of pegs. Boop, 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 boop. And we're going to build a big loop around this series of pegs. Each loom has a slightly different way you're going to end up warping it when you're done. A lot of them come with directions. When Chieftain bought me this one, I was lucky enough to be buying it in person, so I asked in person what I needed to do. But then I also had a question later, and I was able to contact the maker and say, I don't really know what I'm doing. And they're like, hey, here's our tutorial on what you need to know. It was great. So you've got a bunch of pegs that don't move. You've got one that does. This is your tension peg. This becomes important as the more you weave the fiber, the shorter it actually gets as you're crisscrossing. So you have to be able to move this back. Some looms have more than one. They can get quite tall. So that'll give you that. The next piece you're going to need, obviously, other than some fiber, which I'll talk about, is a pattern. You can make your own patterns. There's a ton of resources online to make your own patterns. I started out with, this is how I learned this great book from Annie McHale, in celebration of plain weave. I learned how to do Inkle from this book. It's great. She also has some online components too, and an Instagram if I remember right. I'll try and find the link for it. Super great book. Very easy to follow. It's got some nice color theory in there, patterns, how to make your own patterns, how to play with it. It's wonderful. And the nice thing about these Inkle patterns are you can make them look so different just by changing the colors around. So each page has a series of patterns. You get a little pattern block up at the top and then a larger piece that shows you what it'll end up looking like when you're done. So this is how we're going to know how to put our fiber on the loom itself, this is kind of what it'll look like. I mean, they get very large and very complex. If you want to go crazy wild, that's super cool too. I've done many of them and it's great. But we're going to stick to something smaller because I've been in a destashing my stash project lately. And I'm trying to use up some kind of crazy colors. So I'm sticking to things that I think will sell a little more reliably, like a basic belt. So we're actually going to use this pattern because it's pretty easy. But as I said, we're going to play with the colors a little bit because I can. But that's how you can get so much variety out of just some simple patterns, is colors make all the difference, right? Your goal is to create 2 different sheds of fiber. You'll have one that will go this way and one that will go underneath. And the space between them is where you run that back and forth shuttle. So you have a warp and a weft, goes back and forth, locks itself together. You can almost kind of see it on this belt. You can see the edges where the edge passes through. So we're going to start with some crazy colors. Like I said, I'm destashing. I bought too many things at one point when they went on sale. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was great. And now I want to pare down a little bit of what I have. So I picked out a pink and a gray from my stash that I thought would go along with this really crazy thing. Now, you can use just one color if you want, really. I've made pieces that are just one solid color because I had a specific purpose I wanted to make it for. So you can use one color, 2 color. This piece is probably 6 colors. It all depends on how complex you want to make it. The nice thing about these 8 basic Inkle weaves too is once you put this fiber on the loom, that's it. You're done. I mean, you're not done. You still have the work to do, but that's the hard part. When you don't have any pattern you have to pick out individually from the fiber, once you get it all on there, it's back and forth. So it's a great project to do in the winter when you're watching TV or listening to a podcast, or even I like to do them sitting around the campfire because I can't mess it up if I lose my spot. I don't have a spot to keep. Some of the more complicated things like the pickup patterns or this Baltic pickup that I'm doing, I have a pattern I have to follow fairly closely and I can get easily distracted. I found ways to keep track of where I am a little better, but much like knitting, each row has its own series of things you have to do to get it to look the way you want it. So let's get started with getting some fiber on our loom. We're going to do pink on the outer edges, gray as the dark green parts, and the variegated in the middle. So, woo! I'm gonna mix it up. All right. So, I've got my scissors. You'll also need these things called heddles. They are little circles of fiber. You will make them differently depending on your loom. You're gonna slip it around your heddle peg, which in this loom is this peg here, and once you fold it over, you want it to be about half the height between this peg and your tallest peg. That gives you a weaving shed to work with. I hope this makes sense. I'm going to start with pink. It's not very pretty, but I often just throw my ball of yarn down on the floor because then it can just roll around and I can do what I need to do. So this one is 3 up and 3 down. So I'm always in this particular pattern gonna start with a heddled string. So I'll try and keep myself out of the way. So I'm gonna make a continuous circle, and now my gray is gonna be in the way, by going around these pegs back and forth, because eventually I'm going to have to rotate this whole thing around when I run out of working space. So this is your kind of working space. Now I need a heddle, so I'm going to grab my little heddle. So all you have heddled threads, which make this fun little angle when they're in there. I'm going to do one more and then maybe zoom in a little more. And then we have an unheddled thread. So this one Unheddled threads go, let's see, I have never talked through this before. Heddled threads go up over the top. Unheddled threads cut through this middle space. Gonna bring it around. Alright. Now, this gives you a little working space right here. And I will finish these couple of loops and then I'll bring it in closer so that you can see. So, two-heddled. Add my heddle. And heddled. Three-heddled. Great. Now, we've finished our first couple passes. We've actually reached the first part where we're going to change color. So, I'm going to cut my thread. And I'm tying just a basic knot here to tie the two ends together. Ooh. Started trying to tie a bow. That's not what we want. I just knotted a couple times. Alright. So you can see, this is what I'm talking about. Whoop. This is your working space right here, this gap. And you've got the top and the bottom, the heddled and the unheddled threads, so that you can push them up, create one section, and push them down, and that's a different weaving space. Depending on what colors are up or down, that's how you get your different patterns. So, for example, we'll come here. In this one, this blue belt, this particular row was one set of threads, we'll say the bottom, and this one is the upper set. So that'll give you the two different pattern types, up or down. Next, I'm going to have a gray. Throw that on the floor. And this one is actually just a gray up. So this is when we start in to get more of our variation in colors here. So this time just not one gray. Whew, okay, we got all our fiber on the loom. If I come down a little bit, you can see how it travels along that peg path without ever overlapping on itself. And that's the big key here, is you are going to want to be able to turn it into to circle it around to change what you're working on. And I realize these colors, it's a little harder to see what's going on because they're so bright. But I can also link to a short that I made that has some much more basic colors that might be a little easier on the eyeballs to see. But let me get started here. So getting started is always a harder part. There's a bunch of tricks to get cleaner starts, but I'm just going to go for it. I don't really mind the rough edges. I actually need to adjust the tension on this a little bit because I warped it really tight. That's something you learn over time, is how tight or not you want your fiber to be. It'll help you get cleaner edges, but it's really something you just have to play with until you figure out what looks best and works best for you and your loom. So right now I've got the huddled shed up. So I'm passing the shuttle, which is this piece here, through that gap that we saw in the 2 layers. And I'm just going to pull it through. Great, you guys can see all the way down here. I love it. And now I need to change what fiber is on the top, and this will begin our interlocking phase. So I'm going to push up get my hand out of the way, push up the lower layer, which creates a different new little hole here to work with. Bring it down to where I have my little piece of start here, and pass the shuttle back through that new shed. The hole is called the shed, and I got myself stuck here. Okay. So now I've got a new shed, the new facing side. So getting the beginnings are always a little rough. There are ways you can do it. I can see I've already made a mistake. I missed one. I didn't pick it up. That's all right. We'll just keep going. It's not a big deal. We'll pick it up on the next one. So now, the cotton fiber is harder to work with because it's so heavy. But we've opened up our new shed here. Gonna tighten it up as best we can. And this will clean up as we go along here. And we're going to pass it through. I'm doing my best to weave this sideways because I don't have an overhead view right here. Right, so now we've completed 1 row. We're back to the up, so we're going to push it up. Make a whole new shed for ourselves. Pass the shuttle through. Push it down. And we're going to start to see our pattern emerge. Like I said, I'll link the red and orange belt I made, video I made for that. It'll be a little easier to see the pattern coming through. And this belt, the gray, is a little tricky to see, at least right now. Once we get more, it might be easier, but... Okay. Then we'll pass it through here. Tighten up our tension's a little uneven. That's all right. We can fix it. Pull our edge tight. Ta-da! And we'll do this a whole bunch till we finish it up. All right. So we've got this open shed here. Pulling our shuttle through. Pulling our thread tight. Pushing our shed down. And now we're creating a different space for us to weave through here. So you're basically just interlocking, right? You're interlocking the threads this way, and then you're just swapping which set is on top. And by passing a thread through that center, through here, you're locking those all together when they close back over each other. So that's how they don't unravel. There we go. Thanks for joining me on this little weaving adventure here. I hope that was helpful. I realized the colors I picked to show off weren't the best for showing a pattern, but live and learn. What can you do? I've never made a weaving video like this before. If you'd like to see something else, let me know. I can do my best to try and explain it. Or if you have any questions, I can help you find a resource to get started. Maybe someone I watched before or a weaving book I may have. But this is a great way to get into weaving, to see if you like it before you jump in a little more complex project-wise. I would definitely recommend Inkle weaving as a good place to start. I think it helps you understand the basics a little better. Maybe now that I know a little more, I could go back and try card weaving again. But honestly, I'm having a lot of fun with the Inkle. It's a nice project to do during the long winter. And then the more I learn, the more complicated things I can get into, which is great. And the YouTube community, and there's actually some really great Facebook groups out there too that have to do with Inkle and card weaving, some more historical than others. But I'm on a couple of those, and they're all really inspiring, which is a lot of fun, and the teachers there are really good. So thanks so much for joining me. I hope you had fun. I hope this was helpful. If you need more explanation, let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever that button lives. I think it's over there. I'm not sure. But it really does help out the channel every time you like and comment. It gets our views a little further out there so we can reach a few more people and keep showing off just doing what we love, because that's what it's all about. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day. Bye-bye.